Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we're taking something that might sound, well, a little mundane, offshore maritime protocols, and turning it into what it really is, a high-stakes, heroic narrative of survival. We're diving into the world of offshore standby vessels, or SBVs, pulling the facts straight from the industry's own emergency response manuals. So let's just jump right in.
If you look out at an offshore oil field, your eyes are immediately drawn to the massive multi-billion-dollar production platforms, right? Or maybe the giant oil tankers. But if you were to ask the folks actually working out there, hey, what's the single most important vessel in the fleet? Their answer might surprise you. It's not the massive platform, it's actually this unassuming, kind of unglamorous ship just working tirelessly in the background.
That ship is the standby vessel. Basically, this is a dedicated boat that stays within a 500-meter exclusion zone around an offshore installation. And I mean 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for the entire life of the field. It's literally the ultimate safety net in an incredibly unforgiving environment. Now, what's fascinating is that these are often converted deep-hulled fishing vessels or purpose-built supply and rescue ships. And some are easily over 30 years old. Why? Because that narrow, deep hull design gives them this amazing seakeeping performance. It lets them operate in absolutely brutal weather conditions, which, let's face it, is exactly when you need a rescue boat the most.
Section 1. Tools of the Trade. To pull off these crazy life-saving missions, the crews need some seriously specialized gear. The tip of the spear here is the Fast Rescue Craft, or FRC. Think of a rigid inflatable or a small glass-reinforced plastic boat hanging from specialized davits. These things pack massive outboard motors or sometimes water jets that can hit 25 to 35 knots. The whole point of the FRC is that it can be dropped from the mothership in a matter of minutes to sprint toward a person in the water, a life raft, or even an overturned lifeboat. It's fast, it's highly maneuverable, and it is absolutely the workhorse of offshore rescue.
Then you have this wildly ingenious piece of equipment called the Dacon scoop. So instead of trying to rely on complex crane operations, which, can be incredibly dangerous when you have high winds and huge rolling waves, the SBV just maneuvers right alongside the casualty. Then this power-assisted net and frame assembly literally scoops up to 6 survivors at a time directly out of the freezing water and safely onto the deck. It's just brilliant.
But beyond the boats and the nets, these standby vessels are essentially floating trauma centers. Depending on the size of the installation they're guarding, the crew size varies. The biggest ones, Group A platforms, require a crew of 15. Group B needs 9, and Group C might run with 6. They carry what are called daughter craft, which are slightly larger open boats for longer-range missions, and they've got crane-deployed rescue baskets as a backup recovery method. And once they get survivors on board, the medical setup is massive. We're talking hypothermia rewarming gear, decompression chambers for diving accidents, full-on chemical decontamination facilities, and even basic surgical capabilities.
All right, Section 2, the 2-minute rule.
Look, all this high-tech gear means absolutely nothing without strict operational rules. And the most crucial metric for an SBV is exactly 2 minutes. If a man overboard alarm sounds, the fast rescue craft must be completely ready and launched into the sea within exactly 2 minutes. This isn't just some, nice-to-have goal. It is a strict safety-critical requirement. It gets tested, it gets externally examined, and it is rigorously recorded in the ship's logbook.
Now you might be wondering, why is that 2-minute rule so incredibly strict? Well, it all comes down to the brutal math of cold water survival. If someone falls into the freezing waters of the North Sea without an immersion suit, their survival time can literally be under 30 minutes. Just let that sink in for a second. Under 30 minutes. That makes the early launch of the FRC the single most important factor in whether a person in the water lives or dies.
So what actually sets this whole sequence in motion? There are 3 terrifying triggers that launch the SVV into immediate action. First, a man overboard, like we just talked about. Second, a helicopter ditching, which is an emergency landing right on the surface of the sea. And third, a platform evacuation, meaning partial or total abandonment of the rig. The second any of these happen, the SVV immediately maneuvers to the closest safe position, preps the hospital areas, and deploys every single rescue resource it has, all at the exact same time.
Section 3. Guarding the exclusion zone.
So what on earth is the crew doing when there isn't a massive emergency? Well, the reality of life on an SBV is this crazy contrast between weeks of absolute mind-numbing boredom and sudden moments of sheer terror. When things are quiet, they act as the platform's bodyguards. They maintain a continuous bridge watch over that 500-meter zone. They're tracking commercial ships, wandering fishing boats, pleasure craft, using radar and AIS tracking.
Usually, a quick shout over the VHF radio gets a wandering ship to change course. But, and this is where it gets incredibly intense, if a vessel is on a collision course and just isn't responding, the SBV has to take drastic action. The master will literally steam the ship out to intercept, using their own vessel as a physical shield between the runaway ship and the platform. It takes immense nerve. I mean, they are the very last line of defense preventing a catastrophic collision.
Section 4, Operation Jigsaw.
Let's zoom out to the macro level for a second. Operation Jigsaw is the overarching North Sea emergency response strategy, and it's brilliant because it acknowledges one fundamental truth. No single asset can handle a major offshore disaster on its own. It's built on concentric rings of rescue. Within minutes, our SBV is on the scene as the fast first responder. Then, within hours, larger regional support vessels, acting as hosts to autonomous craft, converge from multiple nearby fields. At the same time, dedicated search and rescue helicopters equipped with night vision and a massive 300-kilometer range fly out for fast extraction. And if it's a true mass casualty event, Coast Guard and naval assets are deployed. It's this beautifully coordinated, multi-layered network that ensures the absolute best possible survival outcomes.
Finally, I want to leave you with a really powerful concept from the maritime regulations. The master of the standby vessel holds absolute authority. But under maritime law, their very first priority must always be the safety of their own crew. It literally supersedes the safety of the people on a burning platform. Why? Because as the saying goes, an SBV lost in a rescue attempt doubles the emergency. Losing your rescuers turns a disaster into an absolute catastrophe. It's an incredibly heavy burden. Just imagine the immense trust required between the master and their fast rescue craft crew when deciding if it's safe enough to launch into a raging sea. So the next time you think about offshore oil, don't just picture the giant rigs. Ask yourself, who guards the guardians when the storm rolls in, and what sacrifices are they prepared to make? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Stay curious,